you build a social voice, for your brand in the age of social media. And I want to tell you a little, story about my background. Actually, I am from. I think there's a. I'm originally from France, and let's try this again. Yeah, that's right. It's like the dog, wearing something. It was like, great. My parents, were in the restaurant business, and they also, bred horses, raised horses. And so I was surrounded by nature, and I was surrounded by, the creation, that you can do with nature. But I always remember my father, when the chef, at the restaurant, would bring a dish. He would, look at it, and then he would smell it, and then he would take a piece of it, and he would taste it. And he would say, you know what, Pierre? Sometimes he would say that. He said, you know what, Pierre? It looks good, it tastes good, but I don't feel any emotions. Why don't you go back and maybe add a little bit more spice here, or a little bit more herbs there? And it's something that stayed with me, for a long time. And I could have become a chef. Instead, I decided to become a designer, and that's what led me to write books that I believe were important for branding, because they really looked at branding from a human perspective. 3 years ago, I had heard that the mayor of Sao Paulo had, as you've seen in the film, had banned all form of outdoor advertising, and so I decided to come down and interview the mayor, because I thought that it could be maybe the theme for a new book that I could write. And then the mayor accepted to be filmed. And then on my way back, I went down with my daughter, who is a director in Los Angeles, and on our way back, we were discussing the interview we had learned, the people that we had met in Sao Paulo, and we decided that maybe it was a bigger story and that we needed to do a film. And so for the past 3 years, we've been working on this documentary about visual pollution. And this is a poster that we created, and the title is "The Space Available." It took us 3 years, 160 interviews, 17 countries, and 250 hours of film. We started the official selection of .NYC, and then we went to Houston, where the mayor of Houston came to see the film. Houston also banned all outdoor advertising in the city. Dallas, Toronto, London, Moscow, Warsaw, Nova in October, but we've been selected by the United Nations Association Film Festival in Stanford, which clearly put visual pollution as a human right, as a human dignity issue, and we're very excited about this, and I'll talk a little bit about this in my speech later. What we learn, from an emotional perspective there, is that first, people generally across the globe don't want to be treated as consumers all the time. They feel that the brands are looking at them just as buyers, and that they are not willing to engage on a completely different, more rewarding, type of conversation. What we've seen also is a rise of women, which we knew already was a major factor. Let's not forget that 75% of all buying is influenced by women. therefore, something, a fact that has always been, or often, forgotten by marketers. And then what we discovered is that cities are becoming centers of innovation, socialization, and humanizing. And I'll talk a little bit about this later as well. It's kind of interesting. And finally, that brands are really out of touch. They're still using older models, that were made for traditional media, but are not connecting with people, particularly in the age of technology. So I remember this interview that I had with the Financial Times, and the writer at the time said, okay, so we've been talking about emotional branding, and so in one word, what it is. And I said, it's about humanizing. Emotional branding is about humanizing brands, and this is really what is important there. There is an area that I look at for inspiration, or a business that I've always really been inspired by, which is the fashion industry. And I've been inspired by the fashion industry because they have to come up with a collection like every season. And their life depends on how successful this collection is going to be. And so they have to be so close to understanding the consumers, and not just from a rational perspective, but from an emotional perspective. And so, Alexander McQueen, you said there is a blood beneath every layer of skin. That's how they saw the people that were buying their fashion. Butchka Prada said, looking at beauty today is looking at women's obsessions. Like, she's absolutely, and there was a big exhibit in, on her work at the Met in New York, where her understanding of, women emotional reality was pushing her creativity to, to the utmost limit. And I'll talk about that later as well. And Elsa Schiaparelli, which was probably the one that started it all, said one should learn how to understand the language of the people. So you see that those designers are really focusing on how they can connect emotionally. Let's not forget that McQueen in his early fashion used to cut his hair. That's why he did not have any hair. But he used to cut his hair, and he would make a lock that he would include in the dresses that he was designing. Which is a gesture of love. That's what lovers do. They cut a little bit of their hair and they send it to their lovers. So he used to do that, and he continued the tradition, not with his own hair, but with hair that he always used as a signature for. That's how connected, how powerfully close he wanted the relationship, to be with the buyers. And then there is this example, that we tend to forget about Yves Saint Laurent and his claim to fame, which is really that he humanized, fashion for a new generation of women in the 60s that were entering the workforce and needed to find a way to dress that would be theirs. And he started to design pants and suits for women in his fashion shows. Let's not forget that in the 60s in New York, if a woman would go into a restaurant, with a pair of pants, and it happened, it's a true story, the maitre would stop you and say, oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, but, you are wearing pants. And there's a famous, and this is not the dress code, so you cannot enter the restaurant. So there's a famous socialite named Campner that was wearing one of the Yves Saint Laurent, pants, said, okay, that's no problem, I'm just going to take them off. And she did, right in the middle of the restaurant. But think of it, because Yves Saint Laurent realized that women, wanted a different way to express themselves in the workforce. started a business legitimizing, plants that turned into billions of dollars. Because suddenly he created a new market through its perception and creativity. The first, I would say, important brand that came to us after I published my book in 2001 was Coca-Cola. For some reason, they found the book, and they wanted to see how they could humanize, the iconography, which emotions were relevant, how they could activate emotions, and how they could liberate the brand emotionally. So we can all agree that Coca-Cola is already an emotional brand, but they felt that they were missing, particularly in reaching out to young generations. So emotional branding, for those who have read my book, is based on 3 principles and 10 commandments. And when we looked at Coca-Cola, we said, okay, we're going to use the 10 principles, which means that brands have a certain level of head, which is the rational part of it, a certain level of heart, which is a connection to society, and then they have some gut, which psychologists are calling the reptilian brain, which is this impulse that we have to do things beyond reason. And we realized that emotional branding, particularly with Coca-Cola, was beyond brand personality. And that, the business of branding had forgotten about people and about life moments. Because people experience brands at different ways, at different time and in different ways. You feel differently when you get up in the morning and you eat coffee, then you are watching a soccer game, in the evening, and you're really excited about what's going on, particularly if your team is winning. So from a head, heart, and gut perspective, what we're seeing here is that traditional marketing has been about creating a persona for the brand. When emotional branding is not about who you are, it is about how people are going to feel when they experience your brands. And so this being said, we realized that Coke was about repetition, which means that they took one design and then started repeating it in the same fashion all over the place. It was about impact. It was not about contact. It was about ubiquity. It's about presence. But it was not about engagement. And so we realized that consumers were feeling so much more about the brand, Coke was not doing anything. And I've been collecting fashion iconography, like shots that have been done by photographers in fashion magazines that are using the Coca-Cola iconography as a prop. And generally, it's always in situations that are a lot more exciting than the messaging that Coca-Cola, is trying to give us. We did research worldwide with psychologists and found that actually the consumers of Coke, were a lot more interested to see the brand evolve and change. So what was missing was this aspect of the heart and the gut, that was not expressed in the Coca-Cola iconography. People wanted heart contact, people wanted, to be loved. And so we started, to bring the color yellow, in the iconography, because we felt it brought a certain warmth and a certain emotional tone into the, that soften, the identity. And as you have seen, before in the, video, a lot of things happen because of that. And then we thought that there was a lot more gut and thrill, that could be expressed with the iconography, particularly in the age of technology. where the brands could be expressed in different ways. And we realized that the co-iconography actually did not need to be associated with a name. By itself, if interpreted in a dynamic way, it would keep its identity, except that it would push it further. And so, what we were doing actually is democratizing the power behind the iconography in ways that completely liberated the brand, brought a level of art and a sense of technology that the brand did not see before, because they were mostly focusing on taste and refreshment. And so it was unprecedented. It was unprecedented rethinking. We did a big guideline to establish, and I think it has influenced the brand. Sergio Simon was the chief marketing officer, and you can read that in my book, said that the aid that Mark gave me was instrumental in helping us take the volume of the Coca-Cola company from 9 billion to 15 billion cases a year. So that's how you realize the power of emotional branding if you understand how people experience your brand and the life moments. And indeed, I don't think I was responsible for the billions. I wasn't in the street, selling everybody Coke, obviously. But this approach changed the culture of the company. It opened up, a completely new mindset on how to be creative with the brand, to please, consumers. And as you've seen in the, in the video before, suddenly the fashion industry got completely wild and crazy.